Regardez, regardez.
Hola, bienvenidos y bienvenidas a FICUNAM. Mi nombre es Salvador Amores y soy parte del equipo de programación del festival. Nos convoca en este espacio virtual una de las películas que conforman la competencia internacional del FICUNAM 12, que compite con otros 11 títulos por el tradicional premio El Puma de Plata. Se trata de la película Re Granchio, o El cuento del rey cangrejo. Es el segundo largometraje de Alessio Rigo de Righi y Matteo Soppis. La película es una especie como de reimaginación de un cuento popular eh, propio de cierta región de Italia, por lo que tengo entendido no muy lejos de Roma, y transcurre en un tiempo indeterminado en esta región para después dar un salto hacia la Tierra del Fuego en Argentina. Y bueno, es una película que además de transcurrir en estos dos espacios geográficos completamente diferentes, también transcurre entre los géneros cinematográficos, ¿no? Con una fuerte presencia del espíritu western, y también entre las modalidades de registro, entre un acercamiento documental y pues una ficción como muy clara. Pero bueno, de todo esto vamos a hablar en un momento con Alessio y Matteo, los directores de esta película, que para nosotros es un honor tener, eh, pues poder estrenar en México tras su debut en la quincena de realizadores del Festival de Cannes. Y bueno, ya sin mayor preámbulo, pues le doy la bienvenida a Alessio y a Matteo, los directores de Re Granchio. Es un placer estar con ustedes y bueno, voy a cambiar de idioma para hacer la conversación. Hello, Alessio and Matteo. It's a pleasure for me to have you here and to have the film in the festival. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I don't know if you want to say some introductory remarks, maybe for the people that may or may not have seen the film, and then we can go to the in-depth questions about the movie.
This film is the third chapter of a trilogy that began with our collaboration with Alessio. The first film was a small documentary about a Black Panther roaming the countryside. Then we did a second film called Il Solengo, which was about a man who lived in a cave for 60 years. And then we heard the third story in this little hunting lodge where hunters gather after a hunt. And we had we didn't have very many details this time. So that's why we made a fiction film rather than a documentary. We had, as I said, just a few elements, and we knew that this man was part of the community in the 1800s. His name was Luciano. He was a drunk. He had an argument with the prince, and that he was exiled in Argentina.
So why don't we start by you telling me how did this film come to be? What was the origin of the whole project? Was it the folk tale, or was it a character, or was it the landscape? What was the seed behind this film?
I would say that the origin of the idea stays with the relationship that we established with this group of hunters, this old men that lives in a small village in the north of Rome called Veiano, with which we created a relation, a relationship of listening to them, to their stories, visiting them, and that's why. And so through the years, we've we filmed there many 2 other documentaries, and so that's how, you know, every story came along. Every time we were filming a movie, during a break, we will hear a story that will inspire the next film, you know, and that's what happened even with this one, El Granchio. We were filming Il Solengo and we heard the story of Luciano with very small details. It was a very old story compared to the other ones that they have told us. And so once we finished Il Solengo, we started working on that idea, knowing that making a documentary would have been a little bit more difficult because of the time of the story that was too old.
And the lack of elements that we had, because this film, compared to the rest, to the ones that we did before, had almost no elements that we could play with. We knew very few things, and we had to bring other things, especially in the second part of the film, where we physically went to Tierra del Fuego to research stories and try to find our character as well.
And then also, I think, well, personally, living in Argentina, the part, you know, the sorry about my English. I'm trying to switch into the English mood. Okay, no. What I wanted to say is that also for me, the elements, you know, that they gave us to the story really attracted me and made me feel close to the story somehow. You know, both of us, the splitting into part, you know, the going to America, being forced to exile to South America, in this case Argentina, and that's also what I think inspired me the most.
And what was like the process of what was it like working with a source that was mainly oral, if I understand correctly? It was like a folk tale, but that gets told only orally. I guess this story isn't written down in any books or anything like that. So I was wondering what was it like working with this kind of expression of storytelling or of culture, if you wish. How was it transformed by the actors or by yourselves in this process?
Well, we were interested in memory and truth. So, as you said, it's a very old story, so the memory around it almost disappeared completely. We, as I said before, we didn't have any elements. And also, every person that would tell their part of the story would change the story as they remembered it. For the second part, instead, we worked in a very different way because, as I said, we went to Argentina and we researched. First, we found actually a person. We did some researches and we found a person with the same name that went from Rome, Civitavecchia, the harbor, to Argentina, and we tried to follow that trail, and it led us to Tierra del Fuego, to the very south point of Argentina. And there we researched local stories and folk stories as well, mostly about a gold rush that happened in the 1800s. And there were stories of sunken ships, pirates, and we put them all together to form that legend that is the title of the film. Basically, what we wanted to do is to show how a movie is told orally around the dinner table, how this story changes through the person that is telling the story, and how this story gets transported to the other side of the world, where it intercepts other stories and it forms always new ones. And in this case, it forms a legend.
Okay, so in that sense, I feel like the film is dealing heavily with tradition in a way, and but there is like these two aspects of tradition that are mixed, I feel, in the film. For instance, there is like a tradition of film that I feel that is very inscribed into the movie, which is I thought of Italian filmmakers like Vittorio De Sitta or Hermano Olmi, like obviously in the first part when it takes place in Italy, and aside from that, there is also obviously the presence of like more historical or cultural traditions of this region in Italy that has to do with what you just said about oral folk tales and popular culture and on this sort of thing. So I was wondering, what is your relationship to tradition, be it a film tradition or of more cultural, historical kind of tradition? I was wondering if you could maybe elaborate a bit on this idea of tradition and your film.
In terms of history, we didn't want to make an accurate reproduction of one specific time, but we wanted to evoke a sort of fable mood in which the story can grow, you know. And so we were interested in recreate the tradition, you know, el paso del cuento, no? O sea, the tradition in terms of orally tale. That's what interests us in that sense. But in terms of research and the writing process, you know, the tradition of the place inspired us a lot also, because you know, in that small village called Vellano, they celebrate every year the una procesión for the saint patrono. How do you say, Matt? Santo Patrono. That's in the film. And then in terms of movies, you know, that's I think the way we worked with Matteo and then also with the DP Simone D'Arcangelo, you know, we exchange a lot references and films that we like in terms of making ourselves understand, you know, making each other understand. And so I think we, you know, that's why I think you recognize some of the authors you refer to.
Okay, so
I don't know if you want to add something, because my answer was very bad.
Oh,
Maybe something about the genre. The main idea behind the film, stylistically, especially, was to create like a Western of the sea, where there is a prologue. How do you say? Yeah, the beginning. The first part shows who the character of a Western is and where he comes from. Because normally in Western films, you have a character that has no name, nobody knows where he's from. So that was the main idea, to connect the two parts.
okay, that's really interesting, because obviously there's this whole Western aspect, but I also I was more reminded of the kind of films that people like Vittorio De Sitta made in the 50s, I believe, his documentary films, especially obviously in the part of the whole procession, as you said, and in this sense, I was wondering about your decision to shoot on film. I believe that the film is shot on film. Is that right?
Yeah, the film mixed 16 super 16 millimeters and digital with the Sony Venice.
Okay. So that had to do with a specific visual idea that you had in mind, or what was the drive behind this choice?
Well, we wanted to shoot 16 millimeter to create this allegorical feeling in the film, this kind of paste that you can sense, like a painting, like that metallic painting kind of feeling that you have. And then there's a let's say more technical idea around the use of the digital, especially in the interiors. And in the second part, we had some, the idea was to create a much bigger space in the second part. The first part is much more claustrophobic and to represent also what the character feels. And the second part instead, where he's empty, the space is humongous. So we chose a bigger frame. What would be the equivalent of a Super 35. And to do that, we chose digital, actually, because in Tierra del Fuego, where we shot, we couldn't process the film. We had to ship it either to Brazil or to the United States or back to Italy. And that was extremely risky for our production. So that's why we chose that.
Okay, so maybe we can talk about the landscape now that you're mentioning the spaces in which you shot. I believe that from Il Solengo, landscape has like a principal role in your films. So I was wondering if you could maybe tell us how do you work with it? How does it relate to the script that you write, or to the work that you do in terms of development of the narrative and this kind of thing? How do you relate both things? Because I feel like landscape is at times even more important than other things. So I was wondering if you could tell us about how your work has been in regards to this idea of landscape.
Well, in terms of we as Matteo said before, we tried to split the story, split the approach of using of the lenses and the landscape between the first part and the second part, because in the first part, reflecting the feelings of the characters, we wanted to feel the audience a bit of claustrophobic sensation, and so we used closed lenses and a lot of interiors. And in the second part, on the opposite, we wanted the character to feel alone, in this huge landscape that it's Tierra del Fuego, reflecting again his feeling, of loneliness and being far from home. And so then Tierra del Fuego, we scouted, we went there with Matteo scouting the place, and we decided the path, that the characters should do, that specifically in the second part goes from the sea, on the ocean, Cabo San Pablo, up until the mountains. It's a fictional walk that these pirates do, but really gave us the opportunity to work with those landscapes that gives you first the sensation of being shipwreck, and then this exotic woods and this huge pianura. Today I can't talk in English. And so mainly it was for me mainly was about the character, so reflecting his feelings. So I don't know, Matt, if you.
And the second part, especially, there's like a kind of a walk to salvation that starts from the bottom, so from the sea level up to the mountains, towards the sun, towards light, towards God. That was the idea in the second part. In the first part, we wanted to shoot not in the summer, in the very in the middle of the summer, because it gets very burnt. It's very yellow, and instead we tried to choose more of a spring feeling of love, and so there was all a study with production, actually, to try to shoot in specific moments of the year to reflect also what was going through the character in that time. So it was more of a, yes, like a blossoming in the first part, and instead emptiness in the second part. It's more, although we actually didn't shoot in the winter in Argentina, but it looks more wintry.
Actually, we had in mind, we had in mind at the beginning some other times, but then COVID catches us, and so we had to adapt a little bit to that. But the Italian part didn't resent at all, and the Argentinian one went into the summertime. That, as Matteo said, it's very cold, so you can really feel summertime there. But we choose at the beginning this autumn to be, Vabbè, questo possiamo non dirlo forse.
So lastly, I wanted you to speak to me about maybe the switch in your approach from Il Solengo to this film. I mean, you've been talking about it briefly, but Il Solengo is clearly a documentary film, and this is like a very, very fictional film. So I was wondering what were the adjustments that you had to do in terms of working maybe with actors and with all that fiction production entails. So what was it like changing your approach?
Well, actually, it felt very natural to us, because Il Solengo is a documentary, but let's say it's a documentary formally, but it was a very written project for us. There was a script, and we constructed also the way we shot the film as if it was a fictional film. So we tried to reproduce a conversation around table, maintaining the distances of the characters that they had, the positions they had between them and with us spectators. So we worked a lot, for example, the distance that the characters had with the camera, in order to transform them into characters, basically fictional characters. So instead, in The Tale of King Crab, we did some of the same things. We just pushed it more. We wrote more. It was more detailed, and we worked with many of the same people, especially in the first part, that we had already created an approach that was more similar to what you do with actors, actually. And we imagined them, being dressed up and imagined them as actors in our film. So we just pushed that concept more. And then we researched many different things, also literature. There's a lot of literature inside the film, especially for the second part. So yes, it was a very written approach in both of our films.
Yeah, in my mind, there's not much difference in terms of inspiration and writing, than constructing the narration of the film between Il Solingo and this one. Of course, this has a more complex and long structure, I would say, but it was more practical, probably. The crew was bigger, the film was a bigger film with more actors. And so we had to deal with directing them, making them.
Many more problems.
There was
a lot more problems. It was more adventures, for sure.
The adventures in the first part to me.
Both part of the film have different difficulties for us. In the first part, everything was shot in the village with the help of the people from the village, and having the people from the village also act. And in the second part, instead, we had to travel very, very far distances in order to reach certain location, losing hours of the day that we should have shot instead. And we had specific things that we wanted to achieve, like, for example, the last shot when the sun passes through the ravine, we had to reach the top of the mountain with a helicopter. And in that specific moment where the sun actually reflected in the water, we didn't know if it would have happened because of the clouds. And we bargained with the production that it was a good idea to bring all the equipment with the helicopter, and then so we could get that final helicopter shot. So it was an adventure for sure. And then there was all the COVID.
Well, I think we're gonna leave it at that. Thank you so much, Alessio and Mateo.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Y muchas gracias a todos los que nos están viendo. Espero que sigan disfrutando de las actividades de FICUNAM y que revisen la programación para no perderse Reo Granquio.